E.
Okay. So we got two chapters today, so I apologize, Steve, but
Oh,
Dang.
I don't know. But um, so this one's kind of the title from 2015 was In a Tight Spot, God's Grace Intervenes. So here we go. How successful are you at card games or board games that require some bluffing to win? Can others read you like an open book or not?
Well, it's easier when you're cheating. Just ask the NBA players.
yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Or
mhm.
can be like those dogs playing poker too, because they get a good hand, their tail be wagging.
Yeah.
Hard to bluff. All right. How successful would you be as a secret agent?
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
No,
Not good at keeping secrets.
no, no. Especially if there's torture involved.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If you were a military commander, what qualities would you look for in an ally?
Loyalty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Honesty.
yeah. Okay, now we go to Rick.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so flashback. Archis trusted David and said to himself, he has become so odious to people, the Israelites, that he will be my servant forever. David's deceptive activity among the Philistines created a dilemma when he was scripted to join the army assembled against Israel. But God did not abandon him to his sin. David has been spared the impossible choice of fighting his own people or turning on his Philistine overlord, Archis. But he continues to play a dangerous game. One of David's objectives during the time he lived with Ziklag was to strengthen Judah's position by fighting her traditional enemies in the south. He managed to convince Archis that his regular raids in the south were against southern Judah itself, when in reality he was assaulting enemies troublesome to Judah. This victory over Amalek is certainly good news for Judah and even fulfills Yahweh's promise to avenge Israel's early losses by eventually subduing the Amalekites altogether. With this victory, David now takes the daring step of sharing the spoils with his friends in Judah, but by giving them portions of the plunder of the Lord's enemies. David continued to endear himself to the citizens of Judah, whom he will soon rule as king. Presumably, many of these friends are the same who will shortly anoint him king over the house of Judah.
Okay. All right, Steve, this is the first page.
Of what, 14?
He's not going to say.
No.
The Philistines gathered all their forces at Aphek, and Israel camped by the spring of Jezreel. As the Philistine rulers marched with their units of hundreds and thousands, David and his men were marching at the rear with Achish. The commanders of the Philistines asked, "What about these Hebrews?" Achish replied, "Is this not David, who was an officer of Saul, king of Israel? He has already been with me for over a year, and from the day he left Saul until now, I have found no fault in him." But the Philistine commanders were angry with him and said, "Send the man back, that he may return to the place you assigned him. He must not go with us into battle, or he will turn against us during the fighting. How better could he regain his master's favor than by taking the heads of our own men? Isn't this the David that sang about that they isn't this the David they sang about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands." So Achish called David and said to him, "As surely as the Lord lives, you have been reliable, and I would be pleased to have you serve with me in the army. From the day you came to me until now, I have found no fault in you, but the rulers don't approve of you. Turn back and go in peace. Do nothing to displease the Philistine rulers." "But what have I done?" asked David. "What have you found against your servant from the day I came to you until now?" why can't I go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king? Achish answered, I know that you have been as pleasing in my eyes as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the Philistine commanders have said, he must not go up with us into battle. Now get up early along with your master's servants who have come with you, and leave in the morning as soon as it is light. So David and his men got up early in the morning to go back to the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel. David and his men reached Ziklag on the third day. Now the Amalekites had raided the Negev and Ziklag. Then they had attacked Ziklag and burned it, and had taken captive the women and all who were in it, both young and old. They killed none of them, but carried them off as they came on their way. When David and his men came to Ziklag, they found it destroyed by fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. So David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength left to weep. David's 2 wives have been captured, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters, but David found strength in the Lord his God. Then David said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Amalek, bring me the ephod. Abiathar brought it to him, and David inquired of the Lord, shall I pursue this raiding party? Will I overtake them? Pursue them, he answered. You will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue. David and the 600 men with him came to Besor Ravine, where some stayed behind, where 200 men were too exhausted to cross the ravine, but David and 400 men continued the pursuit. They found an Egyptian in a field and brought him to David. They gave him water to drink and food to eat, part of a cake of pressed figs and 2 cakes of raisins. He ate and was revived, for he had not eaten any food or drunk any water for 3 days and 3 nights. David asked him, to whom do you belong, and where do you come from? He said, I'm an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I became ill 3 days ago. We raided the Negev of the Kerethites and the territory belonging to Judah, and the Negev of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag. David asked him, can you lead me down to this raiding party? He answered, swear to me before God that you will not kill me or hand me over to my master, and I will take you down to them. He led David down, and there they were scattered over the countryside, eating, drinking, and reveling because of the great amount of plunder they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from Judah. David fought them from dusk until evening of the next day, and none of them got away except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. David recovered everything from the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plunder or anything else they had taken. David brought everything back. He took all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of the other livestock, saying, this is David's plunder. Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him and who were left behind at the Besor Ravine. They came out to meet David and the people with them, and David and his men approached. He greeted them. But all the evil men and troublemakers among David's followers said, because they did not go out with us, we will not share with them the plunder we recovered. However, each man may take his wife and children and go. David replied, no, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and handed us over to the forces that came against us. Who will listen to what you say? The share of the men who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike. David made this a statute and ordinance for Israel from that day to this. When David arrived at Ziklag, he sent some of the plunder to the elders of Judah, who were his friends, saying, here is a present for you from the plunder of the Lord's enemies. He sent it to those who were in Bethel, Ramoth, the Negev, and Jatar, to those in Aroer, Siphmoth, Esthimo, and Rakel, to those in the towns of the Jerahmeelites and the Kenites, to those in Hormah, Borishan, Atash, and Hebron, and to those in other places where David and his men had roamed. That's worse than names.
Yeah. And I've got a map here too, and I couldn't find, not all those cities were on this map, so I found this, and I found, Hebron and some of the others, but I couldn't find all the names on that. But
Are there still those names today or not? Obviously Gaza.
yeah, Gaza is I don't know. I think I had enough. Yeah, Hebron probably.
Okay.
And then I did find the one that's not on this map, one of the A ones that was on there, but it's in a modern place. But yeah, so it was kind of confused. But here's a map of some of the other cities. But anyway, a lot of it's happening down in here. David pursues the Amalekites and Amalekites. So there's a lot of interesting things in this passage, and there's kind of a, I don't know whether the original author was putting in the kind of a joke, but it only the translation from the King James is the only one that kind of has a line in there that makes it seem like a joke or a pun, but I'll get to that in a minute too. So it seems as if we're going back to the very beginning, where in 1 Samuel 4:1, it happened at that time that the Philistines mustered to make war on Israel, the Philistines gathered all their forces at Aphek, and Israel camped by the spring of Jezreel. So, and went out to meet them in war, pitching camp near Ebenezer, where the Philistines pitched camp at Aphek. So I guess that's not a question, it's just a comment, I guess. In the beginning, David and his men find themselves in a bad situation. Lies and treachery have convinced Achish that David is ready to fight his own people in this upcoming battle. So in this situation, discuss what David's options and likely outcome of those choices might be. So here he is aligned himself with the enemy of Israelites, and they're going into battle, and he and his guys are bringing up the rear.
I mean, he could have fled and went back into hiding again like he did prior to this.
Yeah,
That's one option.
yeah.
Turn to God.
What?
Turn to God.
Yeah. Or he kind of could be thinking about what the Philistines figured out. If he's at the rear and they're fighting against the Israelites in the front, he could easily come up and attack them from the rear.
If they were smart, they would have said, "You go before us, and we'll be 1,000 yards behind."
Yeah, obviously they didn't think about that. So
Yeah.
So he's kind of between a rock and a hard place. So here's his line anyway, is put him to this. So he's gotten Achish thinks he's a big ally of his, and so now he's here at this point. So if he said no, we're not going to go with you, then they probably would have turned on him at that point, said, yeah, he's not really ready to go fight his own people like he was telling you he was doing when he was in Ziklag. But
Well, the Philistine commanders were confused because they had not forgot that he stood out in front and killed Goliath. He was not at the back; he was at the front.
yeah,
And now all of a sudden he's willing to be in the back, and they're going, I don't trust this guy because he's the one that dropped Goliath on his nose. So why in the world would he want to stay in the back?
yeah.
They didn't trust him.
Yeah, so it's also interesting in that yeah, in 1 Samuel 28:2, the original language used that translated bodyguard is more literal, and it's in the King James. It says, and Achish said to David, therefore I will make thee keeper of mine head forever. Keeper of mine head has actually been translated as bodyguard, and the King James was the only one I could find where it actually said that. And then, where the Philistine commander is making a pun in verse 4, or see the irony of the one who took the famous head of the giant would be keeper of the head of the king Achish. So they're kind of making a comment here on that. How better could he regain his master's favor than by taking the heads of our own men. So there's a big play on the word translated as a bodyguard, which means keeper of mine head, a keeper of the head. And the fact that he took Goliath's head, and then that's why they said it in this manner. How better could he regain the favor by taking the heads of our own men? So
In modern times, that's a whole different meaning in those two.
yeah. Yeah, so anyway, I thought that was interesting, and I think I think Begg may have pointed that out, but then I looked through a number of translations. I was going to go into the Greek or something, but the King James seemed to have picked a more literal translation of the words. And what impact do you think one of the top 10 songs of the day in Israel might have been heard by the Philistines? So obviously they could pick up the radio stations from Israel over in the Philistine area, and they heard the song about Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000. So
Propaganda.
yeah. So in this chapter, does David mention God or Yahweh? Chapter 29. Well, since the answer is no, who does?
The king.
Yeah, interesting.
Yep.
And interesting that he would use the word Yahweh. So, which is usually when it's appears in scripture, LORD, all caps is what they put for when Yahweh appears, if they're not using Yahweh. So how is David saved from this predicament of having to fight against his own people? Was it God's hand or?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So this is, there's quite a bit, some comments on this, is that, and I think I got some of the takeaway maybe. But even though this is of David's own making, of him telling lies and putting himself in this situation, that God still rescued him. What is David doing in verse 8? And his men have gotten, what is David doing in verse 8? So he and his men, I should have a comma there, I guess. He and his men have gotten a safe exit, and David is protesting, says, I want you to leave it. But what have I done? What have you found against your servant from the day I came to you until now?
He's playing the king, man. He's playing the king.
So again, you wonder whether he had in David's mind, whether he had a double meaning here. It says, why can't I go and fight against the enemies of my Lord the king? So maybe he was referring to Saul in this case, and that he could actually saying what he wanted to do was to fight against the Philistines, but bringing up the rear. But anyway, so we don't know what he was thinking, but it seems kind of odd that he just got an opportunity to get away from this difficult situation where he and his men could have gotten killed. But it was interesting that he was protesting. So how do you imagine David's men were feeling relieved from having to go to war, thinking how great it's going to be back home with their families, and when they get there, finding their families gone and the town burned?
So do you think the Amalekites knew they were Jews when they went to Ziklag, or do they just figure they were Philistines? And
I don't know whether they knew, well, that it known that David and his people had been there.
were there?
Yeah.
Because my guess is they probably obviously had scouts and figured the whole Philistine army's gone, so it's time for us to go in and plunder, right?
Yeah.
One of the chapters does say that David took Ziklag, and said, "Hey, this is great because I can build my army and I'm far enough away from Achish. He's not even going to know, and I'll build my Israelite army right here, right now." I can't believe that there weren't somebody that didn't know that he was building. He obviously was recruiting more people because he didn't have that many men and he wanted to build it to be huge. So I suspect that, the answer is both. We don't know, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised where somebody knew because he was recruiting.
Well, and he was going out and killing all the Philistines
Yeah,
from
I
Ziklag and then
it'd
telling
be,
them,
yeah, I agree. I think it'd be pretty hard. I think they knew,
Yeah.
and they knew he was an enemy. And those people, like even today, it doesn't matter how you shake hands and you walk away. You'll turn around and shoot them later. Uh, there is no such thing as those people liking each other ever.
well, we see that today. Even they almost got a peace treaty, but they're still skirmishing. Yeah, so
Yeah, I had mentioned that I think last week. I said when they go to blow up those tunnels, watch, they'll start shooting them. They're not going to let them do that. Plus, they're having a tough time returning the people that are dead because they literally chop some of those people up into pieces. So how are you going to return them?
Pieces.
yeah. So who did David's men blame for this instance?
David.
David, yeah. What is or isn't fair about holding the leader responsible for the misfortunes that befall the group?
Life's not fair.
But, well, maybe he was. Maybe if you hadn't sent him off to Achish, that wouldn't have happened. They would have still been there. But
When you're
But
the leader, you get the praise and you get the blame.
yeah, that's
Right?
right. That's right.
There's no participation trophies for that.
Nope.
Okay, what does David finally do that he should have done earlier?
Pray.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, he had Abathar, the priest, the son of Amalek, with him. He was the only survivor of when Saul went in and killed all the priests at Nob. And he said, bring me the ephod. This is interesting too. In verse 8, David asks 2 questions but gets 3 answers. What are the Lord's answers? And do you see the three answers? He only asked 2 questions. You wonder whether he asked.
Pursue them. You'll definitely overtake them. And then he says you'll succeed in the rescue.
Right.
He didn't ask, will we rescue them? Who knows if they were alive or dead?
Yeah. Kind of like trying to rescue the hostages in Hamas right now. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's on it. Yeah. So anyway, I think at sometimes we've talked about how the ephod's different than the Urim and the Thummim or whatever those were, which definitely could get a yes or no, but it's never really clear how the ephod answered the questions, because it was the breastplate with 12 different jewels on it, represent the 12 tribes of Israel. So yeah, it's kind of a question how that would answer it, and how we got 3 answers from 2 questions, and he was basically asking yes or no questions, but then so we got a third. So it's always a kind of a question. Now I think I've heard one guy talking about the ephod, maybe the jewels glowed if in some code answer, but I don't know. That sounds too much like a
It
computer.
was like It was like a craps game. They used to reach in, grab the jewel that came out first, and that meant something. And it was,
Yeah,
I
that
think
was
they,
that was the Urim and the Thummim, but
yeah,
the
yeah,
ephod was a breastplate that the priest wore that had 12
yeah,
jewels. So they, I don't know whether they took them off and rolled them, yeah, I don't know. So
yeah, yeah. That's why Saul, Bible, you had mentioned it last week that they had got rid of him and then the Thurman, so he had to go to this fortune teller and use
it's
her instead. Yeah,
agent of the devil, but anyway.
yeah.
Why did some of David's men stay behind at the Besor ravine?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Too exhausted? Yeah. Do they not really like their wives?
Yeah. Yeah, you guys go ahead. I'm gonna have that mission
Yeah.
back here. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, you kind of want, yeah.
I mean,
I think,
I could see them lagging behind, right? Taking a little longer rest and then going. But I mean, if you're pursuing your family,
yeah, I don't think
yeah, it's bizarre.
you could carry on, to your last breath.
Yeah. Although I don't know, were the 400 men warriors and the 200 men cooks and all that other stuff? I don't know. Shepherds? Who knows, right? What's the makeup of the men? Or were they much younger? I don't know. Or older?
Yeah, all these men that kind of followed. I mean, when we learned earlier, I guess when they started showing up where David was, I mean, they were just kind of they were broke. They, didn't have any. They were just kind of,
Disavowed? All
yeah,
that stuff. Yeah.
refugees kind of thing. But yeah. Okay, let's see. While pursuing the enemy, what act of mercy did David and his men perform?
The Egyptian.
Yeah. And that was the key that they did that. How is their kindness rewarded?
He led them.
Yeah. You're doing good. They weren't even underlined. They're bolded. How much of what was stolen did David recover?
Everything.
Yeah, that one's bolded. Yeah. Nothing was missing. How
Even
did the
got his
outcome?
wives back.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah.
How did the outcome of this affair further strengthen David's position as heir to the throne? I think I might tie more into the next part too, but
I mean, he kind of, I mean, the men probably more trust in him, right? In his decision making and all that good stuff.
yeah, they said this is David's plunder.
Hell, is it a plunder when you're getting your own stuff back?
Well, I think they also got more than their own stuff back
Ah, okay.
because they're giving it out. So guys wouldn't say, "Well, you're giving that's my stuff." That's so. All right. In I don't only have one question on this page. Anyway, in 21 through 22, we see a controversy over the spoils taken from the Amalekites. So how does David handle this controversy in verses 23 through 31? And what do these actions communicate about his leadership? And I can read this in case you can't read it. So, no, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and handed over to us the forces that came against it. Who will listen to what you say? The share of the man who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike. And David made this a statute and an ordinance for Israel from that day to this. So it's actually,
Well, it's not mine or yours. It's the Lord's.
Yeah.
So we should share it.
Yeah.
What a concept.
Yeah. It kind of brought to mind too, but we were watching this series. It's based on the Guinness family. Have you guys seen that?
The beer Guinness family?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But anyway, and I didn't know this, but then I did. I mean, it's a fiction, but it's loosely based on the Guinness family. But they were also in politics. The father died and kind of divided up. They had two sons, and one was gay, and they, hired this woman to be his wife, and so she understood the situation. But anyway, so the dad had a political position, and the oldest son that was gay was then going to be moved into that position. But so Guinness, in order to endear themselves to the people and so that they could still have political power, he instituted a retirement program for people at 65. They would quit working and still get their pay. And they also, in the villages where they had workers that they went in and they provided for them and built up the community. So they actually were one of the first companies to come up with a retirement program and everything else, but this was just to enhance their political power and everything else. But if you look it up on the internet, they did have one of the first companies to have a retirement program for their employee and take care of the communities where their employees live. So
So what you're saying is that wasn't out of the love of their employees; it was self-motivating to
Yeah,
continue
so
to have power and control.
Yeah.
Fancy that.
yeah, that's still going on today, but
Yeah.
most companies have done away with those programs. Yeah, so yeah, we talked about that too. I mean, at our house too, on our kids today, and the lack of the retirement programs are the things that the company's really trying to take care of their employees, but they don't anymore. So
Well, it's going to be very difficult to find people that stay at the same company for 20, 30, 40 years because of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So any other comments on this passage? I've got some things from Begg and some other commentary. All right. So these are things to think about in your life right now. Where are you between a rock and a hard place, caught in the middle, whether you do or don't, a particular course of action? In such dilemmas, how does your Christian faith affect how you decide? There's also, I think what are the differences between and similarities of fairness and grace? Are they the same or
No.
no? So how would you see the differences?
Let me think here. Well, grace is getting what you don't deserve,
Right. Yeah.
and fairness is kind of getting what you deserve, right? So to speak,
Yeah.
in your own mind.
Yeah. Or you might imply to this story too, is it fair that they gave the spoils of war to those that didn't go fight? Or was it more grace that David decided to do that? Anyway, so that was just a question from that.
It's like revenue sharing in the Major League Baseball versus the NFL. The Dodgers and the Yankees just spend money because they have unlimited amounts of money because they won't share television revenue. And the NFL keeps everybody going by evenly sharing television revenue.
Yep.
So are they doing that for grace or fairness?
Neither.
Neither,
Well, I
right?
mean, the NFL's doing it for fairness.
Fairness, yeah.
The rising tide lifts all boats, and the Yankees
Yeah.
and the Dodgers only want their boat lifted.
Yeah,
Longevity for the NFL.
yeah,
Yep.
Keep going.
It's a little bit like going into war. I mean, as these guys, traveled to regain their possessions, it would be like your wife staying at home and making sure you're fed when you come back from work or war or whatever it is. And is that fair to them? Do they show grace? I mean, I look at that a little differently from those two words of, Carrie is very much a person who wants to make sure she cooks a meal for her family and myself each night. So
yeah.
I have a little bit different
Yeah.
different outlook of those two words compared to others.
Yeah, and I think, especially that's a good point, Chris, because I think in the marriage relationship, each have different responsibilities, but you share equally in the success or whatever of the family. So, all right, now I got some things from Beg's discussion, and again, it was 2 sessions with him, and again, it always surprised me when they pan back from him talking there. I mean, he's giving the lesson like he's got the audience, but they pan back, and again, this was during COVID, and it's a big auditorium is completely empty except for him and some people in the background.
Who is Beg?
Alice
He's a
Beg,
pastor
yeah,
Oh,
up
He's
in
in
Cleveland
yeah.
area.
Mhm.
Parkview Church or something like that.
yeah, it is, yeah.
He's interesting to listen to because he's got that is it UK accent or
Yeah, he is.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean
he has a
yeah,
great
yeah, go ahead,
has a
Gary.
yeah, he has a great sense of humor, and his sermons are phenomenal. If you're interested in him, he has his own podcast. You can go to his podcast. You can sign up. I listen to him. I listen to him 7 days a week when I walk the dog because I have my headset on, and he gives a sermon. It's 27 minutes,
Yep.
and he is he is really fun to listen to.
He
Let me
is.
tell you.
Yeah.
He tears into the scripture. There's no doubt about that. He
Yeah,
connects all the
yeah.
dots. Yeah, Gary sent me that about a week or so ago, and
Yeah.
he's like he said, he's a good listen.
My
Well,
favorite
Good teacher.
my favorite one with him is the Thief on the Cross sermon. That's
Oh yeah.
yeah,
He's famous for that one. Yeah.
yeah. What are you doing here? I don't know. How'd you get here? You go through yeah, it's a
the guy on the middle cross said I could come.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he had in this for these 2 chapters, and again they were like 30 minutes each sermon or something on this these chapters. He pulled a lot of different sayings and things from hymns, and so I'm going to read some of these to you. I thought it was kind of interesting. So Begg, in talking about David thinking or thoughts without God, reminded him of. So he's talking about how David, thought these thoughts and then got himself into trouble. But so I quoted this from Ralph Waldo Emerson: sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an action and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. So this quote suggests that our thoughts are the foundation of our actions, habits, character, and ultimately our fate. And he also had this quote too: oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive, in relation to David deceiving Achish, which is a famous quote from Sir Walter Scott's poem, Merrimon. I mean, I looked this up to figure out where that came from. It's not a song lyric, but a line from a narrative poem written in 1808. The phrase suggests that one lie or act of deception leads to a complex and difficult to manage series of complications, which what he was referring to is David's situation of lying to Achish and to get moved to the Ziklag city, and so he could go out and raid the Philistines. He also mentioned that it is and I thought this was interesting, that it's a shock to our pride when we discover that we are sinners and not merely people who occasionally sin. And I thought, trying to think about that a minute, because we know that because of Christ, God sees us as righteous, but then Begg went on to say we are saved from the ultimate consequences of sin and will someday be saved from sin's presence, but we are daily in the need of being saved from sin's power.
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah,
I mean, I would agree with that.
yeah. But see, I think a lot of times we're here, we're just merely people who occasionally sin, not that
Right.
but
Correct.
we're still
We are
sinners.
sinners. Right. Right. That's what the Bible says, right?
Yeah,
We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God.
but it is it's a shock to our pride
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So Begg said this verse from the hymn, When All Thy Mercies, Oh My God, written by Joseph Addison. I had to look this up too. The first stanza reads, When in the slippery paths of youth, with the heedless steps I ran, thine arm unseen conveyed me safe and led me up to man. So he applies this to David's actions and God's deliverance from David's own bad choices, and very likely to many of us. So, we did a lot of stupid things in our youth.
And
Yeah.
thankfully, there were no cell phones with cameras back then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, fortunately, I guess it's would be good to run for office so that not everything you said and when you're stupid and young is forever on the internet, but
Yep.
it is for our kids now. But bidden or unbidden, God is present. Alistair Begg also said that, and I had to look that up. It's an ancient Spartan proverb for compilation by Erasmus. The quote suggests that God's presence is constant and not dependent on being summoned or acknowledged. So this was the thing, that God is with us. If you're God's child, God is with us, whether you pray to him or whether you don't, and which is kind of in this case of David, how he got himself in this situation. He didn't cry out to God about, oh, what am I going to do? We're in this situation now. Achish wants us to go fight with him and against our own people. But although this was a predicament by David's own hand, God responded and to protect him.
Well, that's what Luther says. It rains on the unbelievers' crops just like it rains on the believers' crops.
Yeah. But I think this is whether God's summoned and present to take care of us, whether we request it or not. I guess that was the point, like it rains on the righteous and the unrighteous. And then he also had this, sing we the King who is coming to reign, glory to Jesus, the Lamb that was slain. Life and salvation, his empire shall bring joy to the nations when Jesus is king. All men shall dwell in his marvelous light, races long severed his love shall unite. Justice and truth from his scepter shall spring, wrong shall be ended when Jesus is king.
Huh.
And then some other things from some other commentaries. So what really happened in chapter 9, we see God's infinite grace portrayed there in two ways. David and his men escaped a terrible situation. They had no way to escape. If they backed off, then the Philistines would immediately sense David's scheme and destroy them. If they went forward, David and his men would be fighting the Lord and his people. God intervened in this difficult situation and solved the unsolvable. God worked through the Philistine generals to persuade King Achish to reconsider sending David. So because the Philistines initiated this proposal, David and his men were not looked at as spies or a real threat to the Philistines. If they really thought the Israelites were a threat, the Philistines with their huge army would have just destroyed David and his men, and they didn't. Application. We should realize that no matter how difficult our situation, God can make a way of escape. God's interception enabled David and his men to exit a nightmarish situation. And if we find ourselves in a very difficult situation where there seems to be no good solution, we should trust God to help us find an escape. God is able and he is willing. In 1 Corinthians, it says, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to humanity. God is faithful and he will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation, he will also provide a way of escape so that you'll be able to bear it. There's another lesson, however, perhaps even more significant. David had, through his own devices, brought himself and his men into this terrible predicament. David, over a period of years, lived a life of deceit and false loyalty. When God chooses to bless us, we should look to God's extreme grace for our life's mistakes. In some situations, we have completely failed. Don't give up. Anticipate God's gracious work in our lives and learn from God's grace. As God has been gracious, we are to be gracious. Learn to be like the Lord. Thought one, evil associations will always create problems for us. If we become friends with immoral, lawless, and unjust of this world, they will influence, and before we know it, we will be participating in their worldly behavior. It is impossible to walk in the footsteps of the wicked and live a righteous life. Thought two, God's keeping power protects us and prevents us from falling, from going too far, from reaching the point of never returning, of never repenting. If we are genuine believers, sincerely seek the Lord with our whole hearts, God holds us in the palm of his hand and does not let us go. He keeps us, securing us, and assuring us of living with him eternally. God is able to present us faultless before his presence with eternal joy. Thought three, this is a strong lesson for us on prayer, on seeking God during bitter and painful trials. With the loss of his family and then having his closest friends turn against him, David faced the most bitter trial a person can face. Imagine losing your entire family and then later, for whatever reason, having all your friends turn against you. Oh, and then the takeaway card from 2015. Today's lesson is another Old Testament example of Daddy's loving and compassionate grace. David, in an attempt to take matters into his own hands by finding his security with the Philistine instead of God, had put him and his men in an impossible situation with no apparent way out. But God, in his intervening and compassionate grace, provides David a way out, even though the situation was of his own making. God also protected the families when they were captured by the Amalekites. We also see a preview of David as a leader make the distribution of plunder equal among all. So, any other comments on this passage? Thoughts on Beg or any of the other commentary? Anybody awake?
Bueller.
Yeah.
Like Steve received the award for the most reading and
Yeah.
Yeah,
on today's.
Yeah, there you go. You know, I was reminded of a story when you said in all fairness and then grace.
yeah,
There was a son-in-law that took his mother-in-law and his wife to Jerusalem. While they were there, lo and behold, she dies, the mother-in-law. And they're in Jerusalem.
Oh,
They're from the
this
United
is a
States.
joke. I heard this. Go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking in all fairness here. So he goes to the local mortuary in Jerusalem. They said, you can bury her here for around $200. ship her back to the United States, it's going to be about $8,000. But it's up to you what you want to do. He thought about it a little bit, and he said, I'm going to spend the $8,000. And the mortuary was surprised. The gentleman there said, "Oh, well, why would you do that? Why would you spend $8,000 to send her back when you can do it here for much less?" He said, "Well, in all fairness to me," he said, "that, I've been here for a few days now, and I understood you've raised a lot of people back from the dead here in Jerusalem. And I can't take that chance. So I'm going to send her back to the United States." All right.
Yeah, I heard that one
That's-
before. That's a great one.
So now, in fairness to all of you, there's a difference between all fairness and grace. All right. You want me to stop recording?
Yeah, that's